Welcome to this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Today's conversation will be about Quentin Tarantino's Django Unchained. Django Unchained, as long as being directed, was also written as an original screenplay by Quentin Tarantino. And it basically outlines the path of a former slave who is freed, Django. He's freed by Dr. Schultz, played by Christoph Waltz, a German bounty hunter, who basically brings Django along with him on certain missions, finding certain bounties. But Django has also a more pressing motive, is to find his wife, Broomhilda, who they find out has been shipped to a plantation in Mississippi. And that plantation, we find out, belongs to a Mr. Candy, who is played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and we get to see their attempt to get Broomhilda out and all the apparatus around Candy and his really weird plantation. I'm going to bring in my co-host here, and I think a great point to start is that Quentin Tarantino is very unique in what he likes to do. Mm-hmm. And he likes to play homages to a lot of subgenres in film. And in this case, Django Unchained is a black spaghetti western. What do you think about spaghetti westerns attracted Tarantino, and how do they work in favor of Tarantino's style?
I think it works because Tarantino is all about making iconic characters for the screen, right? And you see the entire genesis of the movie, to get ahead of myself, is about Django as a folk character. And
right.
A spaghetti western, where you see a lot of one-liners, a lot of great set pieces, really translates well to the story Tarantino is trying to portray.
Right, yeah, and I agree with that. Spaghetti westerns are about those characters, but they're also about the standoffs, right? Yeah. And Tarantino is famous for those, 10 to 15 minute scenes where just one thing is happening, mm-hmm. The Mexican standoff, and people are standing with guns out and nobody's shooting. That's Tarantino style, so it was really something that I'm surprised he didn't gravitate to earlier, mm-hmm. but one that definitely fits his mode of subgenre.
Well, you could say that every Tarantino movie takes themes from a variety of genres, no matter what the
right.
actual genre.
Obviously, blaxploitation.
Yeah.
He had that in Jackie Brown. Brings a lot of that here.
Yeah.
With the black character dominating white characters, almost abusing them in some ways. Let's talk about the fact that Tarantino's writing style, and even a lot of his films, don't really have linear storylines. They're usually chopped up. We get to see scenes out of order, either if they're out of order by time, by length. This film is really point A to point B. It's a journey of Django, Broomhilda, and their eventual reunion. How do you think that works compared to what Tarantino normally does, where, a lot of the mnemonic devices uses directorial devices is that we don't know when things are happening, and it's kind of a discovery period for the audience.
Because I think Django's also different from Tarantino films, because Django's a character we see develop throughout the movie. He's a character that at the beginning you see just as a slave in chains. I mean, of course, that's what the title refers to. Right. To the end as an outlaw black.
A slave in chains who's specifically called out by his name, right?
Yes.
So Dr. Schultz does target him, so he's not.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, so he's like the chosen one, you could say.
Right.
It's like, in a perverse way, it's like a superhero.
Yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I think it's quite similar to that.
Yeah,
and a lot of what Tarantino's most famous works, you can think of Pulp Fiction, Kill Bill series. It's a lot of disjoining scenes that are put together. Many characters in many universes that come together for a piece of film. But once again, this is a film about a journey, and Jamie Foxx and Django are really predominant in it. So maybe we should have expected this because he's really never had, this predominant of a character that stayed on screen for that long, right?
Yeah.
He's not known for really getting leading roles to have 2 hours of screen time, right? Even John Travolta, when he was a lead role in Pulp Fiction, had a very brief amount of screen time.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not typical Tarantino. Let's talk about spaghetti westerns mandate, almost by its style, a quiet hero, right? The man with no name, you think Clint Eastwood. In this case, it's Jamie Foxx. How does Jamie Foxx do as Django, and does he live up to the billing of a spaghetti western silent hero?
I think he does, but I just find this is personal bias getting in the way. Jamie Foxx is a little hard to believe as like a tough, serious character because we've seen him so long in such comedic, off-the-wall performances.
Right. I tend to agree with you. I don't think he was the most convincing.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie Foxx naturally does have that charisma where he wants to take over a scene instead of being just existing in it. So he really tries really hard. A lot of the moments where he thinks his life is in danger, he puts his hand right next to the holster of his gun, and Tarantino focuses on that. But many other times, he's not solemn enough or internally strong enough to really typically fill the role of the typical hero of spaghetti western.
Yeah, he doesn't have the steely-eyed Clint Eastwood, of course.
Yeah. Now, if Jamie Foxx was the atypical hero, we have a atypical villainous performance by Leonardo DiCaprio, someone who's I don't think we've ever seen play a villain, and he plays a villain, a villain that's more happy, for lack of a better word, the beginning, but still has some bite when he's pushed against a corner. Obviously, when Sam Jackson's character talks into his ear, he definitely turns more villainous. But talk about Leonardo DiCaprio, somebody we know as babyface Leo, become a villain in this film.
I think I'll give props to Leonardo DiCaprio for working into a role that he usually doesn't play. He usually doesn't even play supporting roles, to be honest. So even working in when we first see his character,
yep,
you see right away that this is a character that's going to be memorable. So I think that's a positive for Leonardo DiCaprio because DiCaprio is usually does play more like the Django role. He plays a character where you meet and you see him grow and move throughout the movie.
Yeah.
But in this movie, he's playing a very different.
I think he's capable of this performance and this role, and he does a good job. I want to focus on the person I personally think is the lead of this film. I know he's been honored in the supporting category. That's Christoph Waltz.
Mm-hmm.
His second consecutive Tarantino film. We have Sam Jackson, who's appeared in multiple Tarantino films.
Yes.
Talk about Dr. Schultz, that humorous yet so convincing bounty hunter. And are there any trappings that Christoph Waltz cannot be anything beyond a Tarantino muse to North American audiences?
I think it's because a lot of his scenes that people really like take up a lot of screen time. So, and only Tarantino movies can provide those long monologues. So it's difficult to break out of that.
That's a good point.
When you don't get the opportunity in other movies.
Yeah, you think of Inglourious Basterds, you think of the scene when he orders the milk and the strudel, and he's talking for a lot of time, and in this film too. So you're feeling that it's not Christoph Waltz that's being limited, it's that other directors don't know potentially what to do with his skill set?
Yeah, I think I'd say it. I mean, Christoph Waltz is definitely a very, very talented actor. I think other directors just need to figure out how to use him differently than Tarantino does.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Once again, the year of controversy, loosely termed, some more severe than others. We know that Tarantino, when he makes a movie, he goes all in, and he really doesn't care about popular opinion. So what are your opinions on his use, or maybe abundant use, of the N-word in this film, and portraying African Americans as helpless and even, you know, like animals. You know, other than Django, you don't see somebody converse with each other. You know, they're not opinionated. They just basically take anything that their masters give them. So talk about first the use of the N-word and then the use and portrayal of a majority of slaves in this film.
I really had no problem with the use of the N-word because it was a word that was used at that time, and Tarantino's a character who was very cartoonish, so it didn't feel like it had like the malicious intent any time a character used it, right?
Right.
So
No, yeah.
just like the violence in this movie, it was over the top. So just like the language movie was over the top, so it was hard to take it totally
almost
seriously.
like cartoon language, cartoon violence.
Yeah,
And
so
I don't think you have to say that Tarantino is trying to subversively say that he's bringing back the N-word or bringing back, you know, racial oppression. It's just Tarantino being Tarantino in many ways. We're almost nearing the end of this edition of Inside the Academy Studio, and like always, we like to end with questions. So I ask, what was your favorite moment in Django Unchained?
I think my favorite moment had to be the owner of the plantation, played by Leonardo DiCaprio, and when you see his slow build down to when he snaps, and when it starts with a scene where he's explaining this is why black people, why the Negro race is so inferior, and he points out to the skull. I mean, and then from there he slams his hand down on the table, and you see his hand bleeding, which is a great visual, which was, according to IMDb, it was a complete accident.
Right.
And smears it over Broomhilda's face, and it makes it look like, all right, this is a villain right here. Even we've seen a villain. We weren't really
playful. Yeah, no, I think it's playful. Yeah.
But then now we've seen why this is a villain. Like why is being a slave owner isn't, you can never be a good slave owner. Like it gives you a portrayal of that.
My favorite moment also is involving Candy, played by DiCaprio. It's the first time we see him. It's the Mandingo fights, which were the two slaves fight to their death, and surprisingly, a little tidbit: Francis Nero, who played Django, not based on this film at all, made an appearance. But it's such an interesting thing of how you have somebody so preoccupied in what their lifestyle is, and then suddenly that slight thing of, you have this much money, now you have my attention. And it's just a great kind of turn from a fight to, here's a proposition, here's a business deal. And I think it's a really good scene. How about your least favorite moment in Django Unchained?
Well, I think my least favorite moment is going to be a little controversial, because I'm going to say the least favorite moment was a scene where the members of the Ku Klux Klan and like the whole scene with about the eyelids and the horses, and I'll admit, it was a funny scene. It made me laugh, but I didn't find it extremely funny.
Right.
And I've seen it getting a lot of praise, but it just didn't feel like it fit in with the rest of the story. I mean,
there wasn't really any payoff to it.
Yeah,
right?
It felt like a Family Guy joke. I mean, really, it felt okay. That's funny out of context, but when you put it in the middle of a movie, especially a movie that is already very long, I didn't feel like I was rewarded watching that scene as it fit in the rest of the movie.
Fair. My least favorite moment, this may be a little, to Tarantino diehards, particularly upsetting, but I thought the shootout, which starts with Dr. Schultz shooting Candy, and then Dr. Schultz is shot, and then basically it's Django versus almost hundreds of security guards and wild riders, or whoever was on that plantation. And I enjoy some over-the-top violence, but this was, it dragged on too long. The scene could have been cut much shorter. It would have helped the pacing of the film, even though Tarantino was never really concerned about the pacing of his film. He does it his way. But if it was just shortened down a bit, I think it would have worked better. One of the last things we like to do is word association. So when you think Django Unchained, what do you think of?
That cream cake pie, the cake, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll say cake.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The cake. I think of Mandingo. The Mandingo fights. So we think of cake and Mandingo when we think of Django Unchained. That is this edition of Inside the Academy Studio.
Thank you.